Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to a new edition of the Quarantine Film Series. I'm your host, Kibir Segal, coming to you live from the ATL, Atlanta, where I'm quarantining with my folks. Mom, I need the Wi-Fi, so if you could please get off the internet. All right. So we're doing these conversations. We've actually had over 120 episodes of this series already this year, and we started the broadcast because the creative calendar has been effectively postponed and canceled. So many musicians and artists have had concerts and film festivals that are no longer happening. So this is a broadcast to put the spotlight back on the incredible artists, filmmakers, authors who create the stories that provoke, entertain, and challenge us throughout the year. So if you have an inkling and you want to be in the loop with this broadcast, please subscribe to the social media channels. We're all over on all my social media channels, so you get notified. You'll be the first to know on what are the upcoming shows. And if you have a question during the show, please drop it in the comment field. Let us know where you're watching from. Even if you're not watching live, it's okay. You can drop a comment in the rebroadcast, and I will try to go in and answer questions on the rebroadcast as well. I'm very attentive to the listener and to the watchers. So let us know what's going down, and I'll try to respond. All right. With that, we have a very, very special show today, an international edition of the Quarantine Film Series. And I'm not just talking about Mississippi. We have a true new country here in that we have someone from London. And I've been watching some of her films recently and reading about her. She's an incredible director, actor, creative artist, conceptual artist. She is a multi-threat in many talents. And so I want to welcome to the show an incredible artist. Her name is Ahd Kamel. She's an award-winning actress, filmmaker from Saudi Arabia. She's well known for her role as Fatima in the 2018 BBC Two Netflix series Collateral, and her starring role in the 2014 BAFTA-nominated film Wajah. I need to work on my pronunciation there. So she's comfortable in front of the camera, behind the camera. So please welcome to the show the incredible Ahd Kamel. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So I understand you're broadcasting from London. Tell me first, how has the quarantine affected you? What did you have lined up that's been postponed or canceled?
Well, funny enough, I was 7 months pregnant when we went into lockdown. So I had already stepped back from work, and he came 5 weeks early. So I actually delivered in the middle of lockdown and experienced that, my husband was luckily there for the delivery, but then he was kicked out. So I was in the hospital with my baby for 2 days. So
Wow.
It's been very, very surreal, the whole experience. And it's the one moment in my life I thought I'd have so many people around me, and so many family members were planning to be here. But obviously with the lockdown and everything that happened, no one was here. So it was just me and my husband. So it was quite an intense, I would say the craziest experience of my life by far.
I believe it. Well, congratulations on your baby. And,
Thank you.
I do want to ask a question. You've entered into this new phase of your life. How have you sort of gotten into a routine or the lack thereof while you're in quarantine? As a creative person, have you just focused on being a parent, which as well you should, or have you tried to keep working during this time?
Well, the funny thing is, in the beginning, when I stepped away, I was kind of, you're like, I might miss out on something, but then everything locked down. So in a way, it was a blessing in disguise, because any project that I was, interested in doing or being a part of everything was postponed at that point, because there was a show I was supposed to do in Dubai, and then I obviously found out I'm pregnant, and the shooting time conflicted with that, so we had to push that. But in terms of a routine, there was a bit of a routine in the beginning when I was pregnant, and in the beginning, I think a lot of people were like, okay, we'll cook, we'll do this, we'll use the time we have to learn something new. But obviously when the baby came, it was just complete disruption, and coming 5 weeks early too was definitely turns our life around. And we didn't really get into any kind of routine until, like, I would say after 8 to 12 weeks, when things sort of stabilized, because he was preterm. So in the beginning we were a little bit worried and trying to make sure that he's getting enough food and doing all that kind of stuff. And not only that, it's nothing prepares you for parenthood, no book, no nothing. So it's kind of learning on the job. So it was all consuming in a sense. And in a way it was, I find it was a blessing to have that, to be completely distracted by something and not have to pay attention to everything that's going on, or every detail of what was happening in the world at the time.
Yeah, well said.
And
Well
still
said.
is, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing prepares you, not even filmmaking. But I do want to talk about some of your incredible films and your filmography. Let's talk a little bit about Shoemaker, which won an award for Best Short at the Beirut Film Festival, your first film. Tell us about this Iraqi shoemaker and why you wanted to make this project.
Well, the project was initially inspired by a story my brother had written about the Iraq War, which obviously started in 2003. And there was a lot of, I had a lot of conflicting feelings about it. I was in New York when 9/11 happened. I experienced 9/11, so I understand that. But at the same time, I didn't understand how everything sort of came together. And in the years between the war started and when I shot the film, Iraq completely changed, completely. Like the whole region actually completely changed. And that was, I think it started back then. And all these seeds were planted, Qaeda and ISIS and all that kind of stuff. But I really wanted to focus on people who go through war and people who are not educated. What is the aftermath, the psychological price of war on these people? So that's how the story was born. It was, what do, a normal person who just got caught up in the conflict, how does he deal with kind of this disruption, with war, with actually after leaving prison and after everything has settled down, what has changed them? So that was kind of the idea behind it, was the psychological terror and aftermath of war, rather than just the physical aftermath of war and how it affects society.
Yeah, it's a very special project. Where can people see the film? And go ahead.
It's on my Vimeo channel.
Okay.
So you can definitely, if there's a link, I guess, that you guys are, so if you click on it, it's up there.
Got it.
And it's a short film, so it's about 10 minutes. So
yeah, I encourage everyone to check this out. We have the Vimeo link scrolling there. It's a very special project, and I think very important to see. It's interesting that you, how did the film change your perspective on the war? When you make something, did it alter your perspective of going into it? What you take us through that experience?
I think film in general and stories in general really teach you that things are not so black and white. We live mostly in the gray. And as I think a society, in every culture, we're always bad, right, good or bad, right or wrong, black or white. We take these very extreme stance that are based on ideals, but not necessarily on our own human nature. So with a story like this, it really humanizes a lot of these people. It brings their stories to the forefront. And for me, I think I'm very interested in telling stories of the people who are the mundane stories, not the necessarily very extraordinary people in this world, but what do mundane people go through, and like sort of be a witness to this moment in their life. So for me, that's the power of story. And that's why I love making films, because I'm constantly proven wrong. You think something is so clear and you think that if you were put in that situation, you would behave in a certain way. But until you actually are in that situation, there's no telling how you would behave.
Sure. And you can certainly see how the mundane or typical people do extraordinary things.
Exactly.
And draw lessons from that, for sure. Was that the case with Sanctity and the protagonist within Sanctity?
Yeah, I mean, Sanctity was even closer to me because I got to tell a story in my hometown of in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and it was about a woman, and a Saudi woman. So it was very close to my heart in that sense. And the question for me there was, what would a woman do without a man in her life? I'm orphaned. I lost both my parents when I was a teenager. I lost my dad first and then my mom. And then when I lost my dad, I saw how helpless my mom was in that environment as a woman. Even though she's a very strong woman, she was a very strong woman. She just everything. She seemed so helpless. And I remember her telling me at that moment, she's like, I never want you to rely on a man in your life. So that's kind of the story behind Sanctity. And also, the sanctity of life that we've lost, you know, and I think especially in Islamic cultures, we talk about the sanctity of women, the sanctity of the home, the sanctity of orphans, but we've lost the sanctity of life itself. So the story kind of challenges that and brings up, you know, asks the question of what would a woman do without a man in her life, which is essentially what I wanted to do. I don't have the answer or the correct answer. And that's why I like to ask the question in the film and allow the audience to make that come to their own conclusion.
Yeah, it's a great perspective of just putting the art out there and seeing how the audience takes to it. It responds. Is sometimes they draw a meaning when you didn't intend it, but but maybe you did in a subliminal way. What was the and to that point, what was the audience reaction? What was the response to this film within Saudi and outside?
I mean, outside it got so much attention because it was a short film that was filmed in Saudi. It was showing a different side of Saudi. You know, a lot of people think of Saudi as just like, you know, money, oil fields, and all that kind of stuff, and up to 9/11, and then obviously terrorism. So this was like kind of showing a story that was taking place in Saudi, and a lot of people, when it premiered in the Berlinale, couldn't believe that this was, you know, in Saudi Arabia. So the response was quite amazing. In Saudi, the response was amazing, I guess, directly to my face when I screened it there. But I think because it's a very raw film, a lot of people were shocked as well. They didn't. I don't think they were expecting to see how intimate certain scenes were. And there was a little bit of a shock element, which I'm not necessarily, I don't subscribe to shock just for shock, but if it serves the story, and it wakes people up and, you know, opens up your eyes, then it's definitely worth it. So it's been a mixed bag in a way, but luckily it got so much attention from festivals and in the industry mainly, which is where I'm more focused on as well. And, you know, and how to tell that kind of story.
Sure. Well, something that also gets attention is your acting prowess. You're a director and an actor. I do want to ask about Wajda, and this is the first feature film made in Saudi, remarkably, and it played all over the world. Some of the most prestigious film festivals: Venice, Tribeca, Telluride. Walk us through the story, the log line here, if you will, of this project.
It's a very sweet project. It's basically a story, I think it's a coming of age story of a little girl who basically wants to ride a bicycle. So she enrolls in a competition in school, a Quran reciting competition, to get the money to buy the bicycle. And I basically play the villain, the headmistress, the evil headmistress who kind of stands in her way and wants to break this girl's spirit.
Was it easier for you to play the villain? Is that a role you identify with?
It was funny in the beginning. I was so because it brought up so many memories. That character is so vivid, I think, in a lot of Saudi people's mind, especially girls and in girls' schools. But then it was a wonderful experience. I really enjoy playing villains because you really have to find the humanity behind them, because they're not just evil or bad to be that. Something happened along the way that made them become that way. So in terms of playing it, it was great. And it's always amazing to kind of play a little bit of bitchy and not have to have, you know, give any excuses, you know?
Yeah. How do you keep your acting skills sharp? Is there like a practice that you do? Is there some kind of routine? How does that work?
It's just practice. I mean, it's auditioning constantly, putting yourself on tape, doing all the kind of stuff, getting together with people. Hasn't happened for a while now, just because of work and everything else. But I think the only way to get better is to continue to practice. So I continue to practice. And I also love theater. And I'd love to get on stage at some point. I think that's where you really get to hone your craft, because
Totally.
you're doing it live and with an audience, and it's right there. There's no other takes. There's nothing. So I think theater is for me is a great, and watching theater as well.
Well, we can really see you as a master of the craft in Collateral, which we know stars Carey Mulligan. Um, what is your role in Collateral? And I'd like to hear it in your words.
I play Fatma Asif, who's basically a refugee to England, and she gets caught up. The story is a murder thriller about a pizza guy, who gets murdered, and then it kind of opens up into so many different aspects of British life, and the story intertwines with so many different stories. So I'm basically his sister, the refugee, but I won't give away any more because it's quite the twist in there. I guess you can catch it on Netflix to see. But it was a wonderful project. I really enjoyed doing it, and working with not only Carey but the writer David Hare, the director S.J. Clarkson. They're just like the creme de la creme of British storytelling and filmmaking. So it was a wonderful experience for me, and it was great because it was the first time I read something that was written about an Arab character, a Muslim character, that wasn't one-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't your token terrorist wife or your token, suppressed, oppressed woman, Muslim woman, which is the case in most dramas that come out from the West.
Right.
So it was a wonderful opportunity for me to play a very strong character and a three-dimensional character.
Totally. How has being in such a high-profile role impacted your career? Has there been more interest? Has there been more inquiries?
It's a mixed bag, to be honest. I mean, I thought it was going to have a lot more impact, but that's not necessarily the case. I think because you have to go back to writing, and if there aren't characters that are written for, because I mean, there's two sides to the story. It's the writing, but also not that. I think it's how do people cast, and whether they cast colorblind or they're very stuck to certain ideas, and I think in the UK it's changing quite a bit, and I think also in the US right now there's a huge debate about being a colored actor and where you stand and what kind of roles you get to play, and what kind of roles are written for you as well. Right,
exactly. What was the role that was written for you in Honor, which we know is coming out soon, your current acting project?
Mm-hmm. The role was, her name is Diana Nami, and she plays basically an activist, a women's rights activist, and she's part of the Kurdish Iraqi community in London, which is a very closed off community. And the story is about an honor killing, and it's based on real life events of Banaz, who's a teenager who was killed by her family in an honor killing. So I basically help the police, Keely House, find her, and find the killers.
Got it. And it's out September 28th. Where can we find that?
It's on ITV here in the UK. I'm not sure yet where it's broadcasting worldwide, but I think that will follow shortly after.
Got it. Vanessa here has a question. She wants to ask you, Ahd, what advice do you have to a professional or to an aspiring actor wanting to make a career in the industry? Are you there, or did I freeze? Maybe it's just me. Did we lose her? That's okay. I can answer my own question. It takes hard work and practice to thrive in the industry. Let's bring her back. We were just getting some audience questions for you. Mm-hmm. One question was, what advice do you have to an aspiring actor or actress trying to get into the industry?
Just do it. Just do it. I mean, there's really no other way to get into it. It's just continue, keep going. If this is what you really want to do, it's not an easy path, and there's no clear path to how you can get things, but just continue to do it. I mean, the one thing I can tell you is, and I hope it's a source of inspiration, is that I started off, and I come from a country where there's no cinema. So when I first started off, everyone thought I was crazy, but here I am. You know, I have a show on Netflix and it was part of the first film from Saudi. So I think with acting, you just have to keep doing it and you really have to love it.
Yeah, exactly. Talk a little bit about the Saudi film market industry, if you will. What is the ecosystem like right now? Um, are more films starting to come up? Is there more of a native streak in spotlighting films from Saudis around the world? What's the
I
vibe?
mean, it's changed. It's funny enough, in 2017, sort of everything changed. You know, I think, I don't know if you heard, but women were allowed to drive. There was a huge movement towards opening up the country and also sharing the culture. So they've established a film commission. There are quite a few films that are coming out of Saudi, shooting in Saudi. There are a few funds now that are helping filmmakers in Saudi. So it's really getting a lot of push in the last 2 to 3 years. There was recently the Red Sea Film Festival, which was happening, and it's an international festival, which was happening in Jeddah, my hometown. But unfortunately, it got cancelled because of Corona. So it's a very exciting time for the film industry in Saudi. It's very ripe. I think it's in its infancy, you know, because you need a lot to build an industry. You don't need just actors and directors and writers. You need, you know, film crews and technicians and production designers and so on. So I think that is sort of beginning to grow there. And I think they're also working on the educational side of things, which is very, very exciting.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it.
Yeah.
Is talked, and also I want to ask you about lastly about My Driver and I, also a coming of age story here that is talks about characters and elements in Saudi. So walk us through this project.
So it's a my first feature film, and it's basically the story of a Saudi girl and her relationship, and I'm talking paternal relationship for people to understand. It's a very paternal friendship between her and her driver, Sudanese driver, and it's very loosely based on my experience growing up with my driver. And I wanted to make the film as an homage to my driver, who passed away about 12 or 14 years ago when I was in film school. And when I got the news, I realized I never really knew the person. He knew every detail of my life and drove me from, you know, I was a little kid every day to school and was with me through my teenage years when my parents passed away and up to college. And then when he passed away, it was just a sobering moment for me. So I really wanted to make the film as an homage to him. Um, and it's a very sweet story, you know, about this unlikely friendship and love story, if you will, between a little girl and her driver. Not romantic
What is
love
the current
story.
state of the project? I got it.
Um,
What's the current state of the project?
we're at the last stages, so we're done with development. We're looking for financing right now, and we're hoping to shoot as soon as possible, as soon as things begin to open up, and you know, this whole coronavirus is over.
Yeah, sure. And do you make it a point when you think about your directing projects of hiring Saudis or people like mines, or how do you think about the diversity of the crew and the cast um, in your own projects?
It's definitely, I mean, in this project specifically speaking, I definitely want to hire Saudis because they need to know the story. And I'd love to give opportunities to a lot of people there as well to sort of learn, because that's how I actually learned. It wasn't through going through film school, it was working on film sets that I learned how films are made. So for me, it's very important to have a diverse crew, a qualified crew more than anything else. I think qualifications supersede everything else, but definitely try to keep it diverse. I'm a woman of color, and like, it's a natural thing to kind of try to bring in as many people as possible who can contribute to the project.
Sure. And is the plan to film there?
Yeah,
And okay,
exactly. Yeah.
fascinating. So, what is your philosophy? I would guess on the projects that you take on. What do you say yes to? Because I'm sure there's a lot of things that may find their way into your inbox. What are the things that stand out that you're like, you know, I got to direct this or I got to appear in this? Is there a common theme?
It's emotional. It's a very personal thing. Something has to move inside of me because I believe committing to a project, whatever, committing to a role and even directing is even, you know, a greater commitment, I would say, because you're involved in all aspects. It has to move you. It's like a marriage, you know, so you have to really be able to be committed. And some days you're going to hate it and other days you're going to love it. But the underlying motivation is still there. So it has to really move something inside of me and speak to me emotionally. Otherwise, it's very hard for me to commit to something. And that's kind of my downfall too, because I wish I can just take projects for money. It would make my life so much easier.
I hear you. And from an inspiration standpoint, who are some of the filmmakers that have inspired you on your journey?
There's so many, but I'm definitely very influenced by the Nouvelle Vague, the 60s in France, same thing in Italy, that whole era between 60s and 70s. In terms of filmmakers, I love Wong Kar-wai. He's like In the Mood for Love is like one of my top films. Cassavetes. I just love the rawness in all his films, and I love the stories behind making those films. So there's something that's a bit nostalgic for, I mean, these are kind of big directors. And more current ones, I mean, someone I worked with who was amazing was S.J. Clarkson. It was just so wonderful to see her in action and to be working with her. From the region, I love Nadine Lebaki. She's a dear friend and obviously a big, big, big inspiration for me. Hani Abu Asad, who did Omar. These are all great directors that I love. But in terms of style and that kind of stuff, I'm definitely a 60s, 70s girl, you know, and like that whole movement and moving away from the studio system and trying to put things together on your own and, you know, doing whatever it takes to make the film.
Yeah. Hopefully, we'll see some of those elements come through in your next project. Thank you so much for being on the show. I do want to get your website and social media up there on the screen so everyone can check out. And everyone can see you. There it is up there. You can follow her on her social media, subscribe so you get notified on the latest on her film. And you can obviously see her on the wonderful Collateral on Netflix. And we'll all stay tuned on My Driver and I. It sounds like it's going to be a great project. And when the quarantine is over, we'll have a new film hopefully coming out with your epic project. Yeah, exactly. Thanks for being on the show. Everyone, keep it tuned here for our next quarantine series. We'll have a few more coming, I think, throughout the end of this week. Subscribe to all our social media and you'll be the first to know. Everyone stay safe, stay warm. Bye, everyone.